Greetings, I'm Yiming Piansai.
And I'm Sarah Robertson.
Welcome to the Smart Meetings show, where we gather folks from different areas of their career to discuss important topics in the meeting space.
Today we're joined by Valerie Ulrich, Vice President of Special Events and Conferences at First Republic Bank, and Spencer Glazer, Event Coordinator at Wolters Kluwer, to discuss work-life balance in this episode of Meeting of the Mind.
So to kick things off, we wanted to well, first of all, thank you both for coming. We appreciate your time and making space for us. We really appreciate it so much. But we really wanted to kick things off, and either of you can start this question. But what, in your opinion, how do you see work-life balance? Why do you think it's so important that this is something that we are speaking about now?
I define work-life balance as a coordination of the time that you spend working with the time that you take for yourself to do the things that make you happy, that bring you happiness. And I believe it's a really important topic because our time, especially in certain industries, it just takes control. The work takes control over our personal lives. And sometimes, there are no boundaries. So that's why I believe it's a great idea that we talk about it. It's nothing we learn in school. It's nothing that we've talked, we haven't talked about it until recently. So that's my opinion about how I define it and why it's important to talk about it.
Yeah, and pretty similarly, I think work-life balance is having a perfect in-between for things that you enjoy doing in your personal life as well as your work, and finding boundaries to keep those things in line. I think right now more than ever, now that we're working remote, I think it's easier for these things to have blended. My work computer is at home. My teams I have all the time, and we're constantly in I feel like a space with things like TikTok, where it's like quick. People want quick snippets of things. They want your attention. And so now more than ever, I think it's such an important topic to really speak about and to communicate with. So happy to be here. And thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. Spencer, you mentioned that you work remote. Do you work remote exclusively, or do you go into the office sometimes?
I do. So I work completely remote. It's both exciting and also has its downfalls. My team is global, so we're mostly located within the US, but we do have some of my colleagues in Europe. And so it's really great to have that flexibility. But, the laptop is always in my bedroom. And so, when I speak to my parents, when they go into the office, or when they used to, they leave the computer there after 5 or over the weekends. So that's not really something that working remote, has to it. So in that respect, it can be a challenge when we think about work and life balance.
Well, that's an interesting question. First of all, this week would be the 29th year that I would be working with First Republic as the Vice President of Special Events and Conferences. But anyway, the interesting thing about working remote was during the pandemic, our chairman told us to work from home for 6 weeks. So my husband and I, we both work for the bank, and he said, why don't we go to our place in Hawaii? So we went, and instead of 6 weeks, I was there for 20 months. So I was working remotely, but I worked really every day because we were just trying to do a lot of virtual events and starting a new concept of events. And then I was actually planning a lot of events in a different way, for space, thinking about space and people's concerns about the situation. So I love working from home. That's just, to me, it's just my preference for a lot of reasons. I really like serenity. I like peace and quiet when I'm working. And when I'm at the office, people come into the office, they come into my office and chit chat. And I'm not really one that wants to spend a lot of time doing that. So I don't really like a lot of interruptions. So that's working from home is something that I've done for a long time. And I've been fortunate that my managers have allowed me to do that. And I think that's a gift that they've given to us. And I know you said, Spencer, that it gives you a better opportunity to work a little more balanced. And I believe that it saves a lot of time by getting ready and commuting. And but it's nice, like you can go out and you can take a minute and put your laundry in you could do take little breaks a little bit differently. So
if you're at home working mainly not like in an office space, I was curious, like, do you feel like you have more say in how your day goes? Like, does your workday end at 5, or do you kind of like, does it go back and forth? Like, do you still give after hours your time, or do you kind of like, no, I'm gonna do something. I'll go for a walk. I'm gonna go read a book. Like, where do you say, like, my time is my time and work time is my work time?
I think it really depends on your organization and your team. I'm fortunate on my team right now where our working hours are 9 to 5. But it is pretty flexible. If you want to take a walk during the day, you can. If your time allows, to do a little maybe home meditation workout class. We really want each other to be well rested and take advantage that we do work from home and we have that opportunity. And so that is a really nice aspect of work from home. But then there's that other side, right? Of, okay, well, let me just do this quick email, or let me just work on this quick project, even though it's 11 p.m. or whatnot. So it definitely can go back and forth. And, there's pros and cons to everything in life.
So I feel like each person needs to work with their own pattern of behavior to determine when to work and when to take breaks. So that's sort of what you're saying, Spencer. For me personally, I get up about 5:45 in the morning. Yesterday I got up at 4:30 because my husband had to take a flight. But as soon as I get up, I'm really energized. I'm like really ready to work, and I'm sharp. And so that's when I start working. And I'm good until maybe around 12ish or so. And then that's when I want to take a break. And that's when I might take a walk. And then I'm really strong again in the evenings, and it really makes my husband upset because when he comes home, he's really great with the balance. He knows when to end the day and when to start the day. But me, I'm not very good about cutting it off, and I feel like it's important to do my focus work the times when I'm really sharp, which is for whatever reason from 6 in the morning until noon, and then I'll start up again at 4 or 5. I'm really good at get going until late at night, and I think I think it's important that the night before I always make my lists so that in the morning I'm ready to focus, and I do it. The way I do it, I have to write it out on paper so it's in front of me. And I write down calls, then I have a list of emails, who I have to email, things I have to do, and places I have to go, and then things I have to maybe look up on the internet or something, do some research. And I try to do the calls when I'm walking. And that's my way of being a little more productive rather than just sitting, making a phone call.
Gotcha. So, kind of like go into what you guys do every day, I'm assuming. When you guys are at events and such, how are you finding work-life balance there? Because I know you're in it, you're busy, you have stuff going on, you have people calling you, you have people asking you to do things. How do you find time within those spaces to kind of regroup for yourself?
Yeah, I can start. So being on site at a program for my current company, that kind of what that looks like is going to travel. So I'll be outside of my home environment, typically staying at a hotel, working the event, whether that be usually early in the morning, opening registration until after the evening program at night. So that might be from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. just working on that one program. But, we in the event space are working on many programs at once. And so all of the other things on our plate also have to get done. And so I think when I first started, that was a little challenging to manage that. And I would get back to my room at 11, my hotel room, and I would work on other projects until late at night and have to be up way early in the morning again. And it was definitely a task to manage that, and really working on setting boundaries and letting my stakeholders know, hey, I'm going to be on site from this date to this date. There might be a delay in response. And, things such as that. But it can be quite challenging because that little time at night would be my only, personal time, but it then got taken up by all of the other work projects that I have. But I think really finding those little moments to maybe call home, call family, catch up with friends on the phone throughout the day if you have a 5-minute break is really grounding for me. I think sometimes I get so locked into the program that I'm currently on. Everything else seems like a million miles away. So I get that balance by really reconnecting with those that I'm close to. It doesn't take too long, but it really does help me feel well-rounded.
Well, you're better balanced than me. I don't really, when I'm at a program, first of all, I know you're correct in us. We're always planning the next event. There's so many things that you have to do in advance for the next event. So right. It's never like a little box where, okay, today you're only going to focus on this. But I find that during those program times, especially a conference, we really have to work many extra hours to get everything done. We have to get up earlier. We're not going to do our regular routine. We're not going to get our regular breaks for lunch. We're not going to have time we don't have time to chit chat with our friends or family or whatever. And we have to work a lot later because we have to get everything ready, and then we have to clean everything up and prepare for the next day. But I think that's the one thing about our industry is that we know that during those programs, we have to kind of give up our work-life balance. But then afterward, then we can reward ourselves. I mean, like when I stay, let's say at a conference, I might stay over the weekend at a hotel and I'll spend a few hours at the spa or go out to restaurants or visit and just play and refresh and reboot. And that's the reward. And also, I think a lot of times during the setup days, I like to try and go get a nice lunch with somebody. I like to go with the vendors and my colleagues, and we like to just kind of reboot that way.
So what I'm hearing is, Valerie, you do it after. Spencer, you do it during. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Okay. So definitely afterwards, I make sure to rest and regroup myself. But I think during the event, even 5 minutes here and there, nothing crazy. But 5 minutes at the end of the day just to speak to, my family for me is what kind of keeps that balance in place. But again, that does not make up for maybe the, 16-hour day. So then we take the real break afterwards. And just like Valerie was saying, do something if I'm traveling. It's really nice and take advantage of that opportunity to do something that I can't do at home or see someone who doesn't live near me. And I think that's one of the benefits of the job.
I agree. And the other thing is, a lot of times if I would be going to a conference, again, that takes us out of the office. But I might go a couple days ahead of time and just explore the city wherever I am, or just take advantage of just that being a little opportunity to relax a little bit before the storm starts. But it's interesting about how we talk about our industry and how we do our work-life balance. But I think about people that are in other industries. For example, I have one of my interns that I've had for many years who ended up getting a full-time job. She's in investment banking, and she's expected to work unbelievable hours every day, including Saturday. As you know, investment banking people do that. And they're usually younger, and they're expected to work long hours. And they're incentivized by saying, oh, well, we'll send you a car to pick you up in the morning, and there'll be a car to bring you home at night, and you can have dinner, we'll buy you dinner. And that's so you can just keep working. That type of a job, I think, can burn you out pretty quickly. But I'm also fascinated when in our industry, you think about when we're at an event, we work with a lot of vendors or people that are working, and they have specific hours. They have to take a break a certain time. They have to take their lunch a certain time, and they have to take their dinner break. And I can remember many times where we'd be doing a huge turnaround of like from a general session into a gala dinner. And we need all hands on deck. Everybody has to be involved in putting on the linens and the glassware and the centerpieces. And you'll be maybe just 5 minutes more before you're completely set up. And several of the people, it's their time for break, and they'll just walk away. And so that's kind of interesting to me that, okay, they get their downtime right now. They're going to do their work-life balance. But it's kind of frustrating, but it's interesting that kind of thing happens.
Sorry. So kind of based on what you were just saying, when you're in a job that like says like, oh, we'll send a car, we'll give you this and that, does that make it harder to like create these boundaries for yourself when you're like being given all these like nice things to like, compensate for the time that you're losing, in a sense? Does that make it harder for that to happen, for you to create like these boundaries for your work-life balance?
I believe it does, because I believe it's actually, the message is we're expecting you to stay and work more hours. And for that, we are giving you, we're going to have dinner for you, or we're going to send a limo for you. I mean, I lived in New York for 10 years like you do, Spencer, and I worked at a company that was like that. I mean, we would take the limo. That was before Uber, of course, but the limos were available, and the dinner everybody would order in, or you could take a break and go out. But mostly it's ordering in, eating on the job. And I do think that type of a situation prevents you from having a better work-life balance.
Definitely. I think that you look at companies like with huge offices like Google or Facebook, and they have, 10 restaurants right there. So you never have to leave. You can just get your food, go back to your desk. So there definitely is a lot of, glamour around. They try to make around keeping you at the office sometimes.
I was going to ask a follow-up question to something that was mentioned earlier in terms of running these events. And Valerie, you mentioned there are moments when you just don't have time to take a break. You need all hands on deck. And so in terms of having that work-life balance at events, when you're making time for yourself before or after the meeting or event, or as Spencer said, in short 5-minute phone calls home or with friends, do you find that gives you enough time to re-energize yourself and be productive in those moments when you really don't have time to take a break?
Well, the truth is, and I'm sure Spencer's the same way, I have been lucky that I'm in a job that I don't feel is work. I mean, it is my life. I make it my life, but I'm so happy, and it energizes me, and I feel that's a real gift. And I know my husband gets on me because I do work a lot of hours, but I don't feel like I just don't feel like I'm really working. It's just like I want to do it because I'm excited about it. I love it. And my mind is always going, thinking about the next one or the next thing and planning. And it's kind of hard for me to divide the two.
I think that similarly, we're lucky enough to be in an industry where I think we're both very passionate about what we do, and it's exciting to be on site for those projects that you've worked months, sometimes years for. And when we compare it to what we spoke about, with some of these investment bankers, I don't know if they find their job as exciting. Maybe they do. But I feel like the passion really drives us through, as well as, I'm fortunate enough to work with people who I really care about and I work really well with. I think surrounding myself with people who are like-minded definitely helps. It's almost kind of like a marathon, you might be running a marathon and halfway through you're like, I don't know if I can do this, but you keep going and eventually you get the prize at the end. So I think it's very similar. You just keep on going and you're so excited to be there, and that there's a prize waiting for you at the end, whether that might be some time off or time with friends, catching up. So things like that.
And I find that during the events, I feel like I'm working with some amazing people because I partner with great vendors and venues. And so I'm surrounded by fun and people that I'm not usually around. So that's really a gift, another gift that although I'm working, I'm really having a great time because I'm with these people that I value so much.
And one more quick thing. I think working remote makes you appreciate the people even more when you're in person. Me and my colleagues, every time we get to travel to an event together, it's like going to see almost kind of like sleepaway camp or something. I've spoken to everyone. We're in meetings every day remote. But then you get on site and you get to see people you haven't seen, in a year, never met before, have worked with for 2 years. And it's special. It's really exciting.
I think that's a good point, definitely.
So, quick question: if you love your job, if you are passionate about your job, does that change how you deal with this work-life balance thing? Is that a factor in your mind? If let's say you don't like your job versus you do like your job, is there a difference in how you is happening for you? I'm not saying you don't love your job. I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking.
I believe there is. I mean, I've worked at companies where I've seen people that basically have a 9-to-5 kind of mentality, and it really is. I struggle with that. I can't figure it out. But I remember when I lived in Indianapolis, Indiana, I worked for Eli Lilly and Company, and it's a huge company. It's in a lot of factory people, and of course they are a certain hour, and they have the breaks, and they have their lunch hour. But then there was the office staff, and I could never believe that basically the staff is a 9-to-5 staff, like secretary. Well, we called them secretaries back then, executive assistants or whatever. Now, they would clock in at 9 in the morning, and then at 5, before 5, they're standing at the door, waiting for the clock to turn 5. They'd stand there at 5 or 10 minutes till, and they wouldn't leave until the clock hit 5. I'm like, that is so wild. To me, that's just wild. I don't know. It's also interesting when I love that people don't take work home. I love that they can do that. I always have to have my backpack that's loaded with papers or something, because if I'm someplace where I have 5 minutes that I can be doing something, then I have to have something with me all the time to have a project. But I love that people can keep the distance from their work and not take it home. And I think it's a gift, a real gift. What I like to do for my boundaries is, first of all, I swim every morning. So I usually get up, and at 6 o'clock, that's when I go swimming. And I do a lot of thinking while I'm swimming. My mind works pretty sharp. And I know most people aren't going to call me and email. I'm not going to be nothing really important during that time. And then I like to do my walking. And then I like to go to a spa at least once a week. And that is, to me, the best way to relax, because I can't have my cell phone with me. I can't have my laptop. I can't have any work. And I have to be quiet. So it's a really nice opportunity to chill.
Nice.
And so what I'm hearing is that it's really vital to schedule time for yourself that is not work, time that is rejuvenating for you. Another question that I wanted to ask, Spencer, you mentioned towards the beginning of our discussion that working from home is tricky because your laptop is in your bedroom and you're working probably in your bedroom or your office. And so how do you create that time for yourself when your work is right there?
Yeah, I have to be honest, it can sometimes be a little tricky. It's not a super maybe natural, process, especially going to school or something, physically you're in a mental space of in the classroom or home, and kind of creating that divide can be a little challenging sometimes. So I really think boundaries, and people set their own boundaries. For me, I log in the morning, and, I try to log off at like 5 when my company's workday is done. But, sometimes there is things that I want to do. And I think this is going back a little bit to what we were talking about before about people really caring about what they do. For me, knowing that there's like an end project is so exciting, and there's a physical, tangible event that will come out of it is super motivating to me. Sometimes, I'm like, oh, I really want to just work on this, get this done, and do some research on this cool activity or whatnot. I can be a little tricky. Because I'm always in the mindset, well, something might come up tomorrow. I can just quickly get this done and then I won't have to think about it. But, setting boundaries for myself, after 9 o'clock, I really try to not touch anything. At that point, I need to just save for the next day. But I think another thing comes to mind is setting boundaries for yourself and thinking about how those might affect others. I sometimes work really well, like late at night. If nobody can email me, no one's sending me any pings, notifications, and I can really get some very tactile, like individual budgeting or things like that done. And a colleague of mine had set in her footer of her email, I might be sending an email late at night. The expectation is not for you to respond right now. This is just when I work really well. And I think that really stood out to me because sometimes I'll get an email and I'm like, oh, this needs to be done right now. Great. Like, let me just log on. But so I think it's being cautious and courteous about, okay, my boundaries, yes, work for me, but they have to work for everyone else. So that really stuck out to me that she had included that in her footer. It's a great point. I'm working right now and this is when I work well, but this might not be when you work well.
That's a really good thing right now that we have so many times when we're emailing or sending a text to somebody. And it might be, like you're saying, it might be the right time that I want to send it, but I'm not expecting somebody to answer it. And I know my husband always says, don't send that text now. You can't send a text this late. I'm like, well, they don't have to respond until they want to. But what do you think about that? That's kind of an interesting, I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing that I feel like most people know that they don't have to respond until it's their time to respond. People know when there's something urgent, but it is interesting how we all send those texts and emails at whenever it's our time. Right. It's our productive time.
Interesting, Valerie, because you mentioned working in a similar way. Like you'll be very productive in the morning until around 12, and then you need some time to take a break, and then you'll be really productive again beyond like 3. And after the typical working hours of 9 to 5. So I think that that's similar to the way Spencer mentioned that he feels productive around 7 to 10 or around that time frame.
Right.
How do you compensate for those extra hours outside of the typical 9 to 5? In like your personal life balance?
Well, as I said, I feel like I work really hard when I need to. And then I'm comfortable taking a good break. And I've just learned that really in the last 4 or 5 years. During the day, I might go and have a 3-hour lunch with some friends. And that's just, that's not a normal thing, right? But a couple of times, maybe a couple of times a month that's how I might make up for it. Or I might go shopping, do a couple of errands in the day, and I might take a longer break in the day and then make up for that. but I never think about an 8-hour day or a 6-hour day or a 10-hour day. I don't think that way. And I do try to get a good night's sleep. I think that's really critical. And I try to eat really healthy. And what I try to do is find my ways to relax. So in the evening, when I'm finished with the work and finished dinner and everything, when I go to bed, I might watch a movie. I discovered Netflix during the pandemic, and so that's kind of my new way to relax, and I like that. And then I think it's a good idea to take vacation and take your time, which I will be honest with you, I really never always took on my vacations. And but I think it's a good idea to do that. You owe it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And I'm fascinated that people, I think what people should do is they should, when they go on vacation, I'm not saying I do it, but I think they should send an out of office notification, because I really think it's fair that you don't respond. You don't look at your emails and work during your vacation time. I really believe that. And I'm like I said, I'm not good at that, but I'm going to try to learn.
It's a solid goal.
I feel pretty similarly. I think that we make up for that when we're, traveling personally, right? In my company where I am now, we have a kind of program where if we travel or if we're on an event over the weekend, so we're utilizing one of those weekend days that would be elsewise used personally, then we have an extra day that we can take off within the next 2 weeks.
That's great.
So it really makes it easy to take a quick weekend trip or something to really escape for all those extra hours that were put in. And in terms of having an out-of-office email, completely agree. I put it on. Am I still checking? Yes, probably. But I think it's just natural. I just kind of want to see what's going on. I think something that's helpful also is having a backup, on your out-of-office if something is needing immediate attention, please reach out to X, and this is their contact information.
Totally.
I think it gives me some, peace of mind that nothing will burn and everything will be okay when I get back. And it kind of lets me relax for a minute. So that's something I think definitely helps me escape when I'm taking time off.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing I think we have to acknowledge is that it's pretty impossible for us to be really productive for more than 8 hours a day. I mean, it's been proven. And so I think people need to keep that in mind. And I also think that one thing I've learned is that we don't have to do everything 100%. It's hard because I'm a perfectionist, so I've always kind of wanted to be 100%. But I remember my chairman, it was really cute what he did one day. He said, Valerie, this is 100%, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And then he took a piece of legal paper and he goes, this is what you do. But anyway, he said, this is all you have to do. And I'm like this is 100%. Legal is what you do, you think you do, you think you have to do, but you only have to do the 80%. Because really, most people don't notice all the imperfections that we might notice, and all those little things that we think are so important are not. And so it's really better to focus on that 80% and get that right. But I love that analogy, and that was something he gave to me like 26 years ago. But isn't that a great one?
Yeah, I really love that. I think that sometimes we're, like we were talking about, we're on multiple different events, multiple different projects, and sometimes something only needs, 20%. Sometimes it needs 100%, but really knowing when something needs what, I think is super important. And if you try to put 100% into everything, you're going to have no balance, right? So I think that's a great point.
Another thing I believe that I learned, it's okay to say no sometimes. And I'll never forget when I first started working at First Republic, and I was always, yes, everything. And then, I mean, it's almost impossible to do everything. But I remember one day something was asked, And I just can't. I mean, I can't take on another project. And I said no, and my boss didn't care. He says, okay, and he got somebody else to do it. I was pretty fascinated about that. Like, that's my first time I learned that you can say no, even to your manager.
Yeah, 100%. And in my role now, I'm a coordinator. And so I will be a manager on some projects, but then keep that coordinator title on others. And so sometimes it can be hard to, manage when I have my own events that I'm fully owning, and then some where I'm just kind of handling ad hoc tasks. And to say no, sometimes at the beginning can be, a little daunting. But really when I'm thinking about that balance, if I take everything on, my work-life balance is going to go out the window. And I think my quality of work is also going to go out the window, right? So kind of thinking about that and saying no when applicable. But also I think what's really helpful for me to maintain that balance is if someone asks me to do something, instead of saying just, yes, I can take this on, I always go, yes, I can take this on. I will have it back to you by X. Or when do you need this done by? It's super important for me. I'm a big calendar person. I need to mark it on my calendar when it needs to be due. And it's one of those other things. I think it plays both ways because if something doesn't need to be due for 2 weeks, I might late at night have some time and be like, oh, let me just do this now. But if I know I have all this time, maybe I'll save it for when it actually during the workday, right? Not at 11 p.m. when I maybe should be spending some personal time. But it really just keeps me in line, having a schedule and using my calendar. And again, saying no when applicable. You gotta keep your things together.
Right. But I think that's really, I agree with you that when somebody asks you to do something, you want to ask, when do they need it?
Right.
What's the deadline? That way you can schedule your time and do your balance a little better. And then if it's something that's impossible, it's interesting too. I love it when somebody's, I'd like to get that by the end of the day on Thursday. And then I'll say, well, it doesn't appear that I'm going to be able to make that deadline. I could give it to you by Friday at the end of the day. And surprising how often that works for them. Right?
Yeah.
It's just, people just come up with a deadline that they think is really what they want, but it's not always the case. So I think that's good. I also think that it's a good idea to feel comfortable to ask for help when you need it. And I've had some wonderful managers who have insisted that I get help. They see that I might be in overload and they say, you need help. We need to get you some help. And I love that. I think that's I think it's not, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
To avoid that burnout and overload and unbalance. And that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I feel like it's definitely, it's a balance, especially on a team. Sometimes I have a lot of projects I'm working on. Sometimes my colleagues, don't. And so I think having a good team balance can also help your work-life balance. If I'm overwhelmed, someone can help me out. And then, vice versa. Right. When they're overwhelmed, I can help them out. But I think everything goes hand in hand. And, you're all here for one goal. So it's going to get done somehow. Is there anything that you think is kind of changing the scope of work-life balance in our industry, or new things coming out that might affect the work-life balance that we think of now?
One of the things that I find is recently, the past couple of years, I'm finding that management and HR departments are encouraging people to take time off. I mean, they're encouraging you to take time off for your family, enjoy it, take away, go home early, recharge. And that message, I don't remember ever hearing that until the last couple of years, but I really value that message. And I feel like it's becoming more, it's happening more often in other companies as well. Do you feel that way, Spencer?
Absolutely. I feel now it's, we want to take you 20 days, all right, you're expected to take 20 days off. I think that we've all kind of realized maybe throughout the pandemic or whatnot that time off is really important. And people's mentality, their mindset, their quality of work is all better when they have time removed. And so I think that's super important. The other thing I think is technology has so helped work-life balance, I think, for me in terms of little tasks, things like ChatGPT definitely helped me in terms of, I use it a lot for very minuscule things. Like, for instance, I had a shipping log that I needed to move into one of our internal documents, and it would have taken me hours to pull out just the tracking number for each line. And I just put it into the system. I said, please give me all the tracking numbers in this huge list of text. And it pulled it out, put it in my document, it sorted it. So little things like that. I mean, that would have been probably 3 hours of work. It was for a huge conference. It was hundreds of boxes. And so just that, I mean, 3 hours is 3 hours. So I think where we're moving, technology is super, super helpful, and hopefully will contribute to us having a little more personal time.
I was going to say that it's interesting. It's coming up that work-life balance is not just about making time between work and your personal life, but it's also about creating balance in your actual work, like making sure that you're not putting 100% into everything if it's going to burn you out. And I wanted to ask more about that. How do you, decide when to say yes or no to something? How do you decide when to put 80% into something versus 100% into something?
I think, in terms of when to give 100%, when to not, I really think it comes down to deadline. When is this event? And what's upcoming. I think sometimes I have projects that I don't really need to focus on and give my 100% at the moment. Sometimes I have things that are due date tomorrow. The event is, next week. And those are things where I'm going to really want to exude all the effort and time that I have. But really knowing when and where to place that time can be super important.
And a lot of times I believe it also depends on who's asking you the question.
Yes.
Because we all know when our chairman asks for something, we're going to do it right away.
First priority.
If one of our colleagues asks, we're going to maybe not do it immediately, but
yes,
we're going to find out when you need it. But we're not going to ask. That's just normal, right? That's just common sense for us. So, but I think, I'm pretty good at prioritizing. I can hear what somebody wants and pretty much just make a determination of when I need to get that done. It's interesting for our events. We have so many things that we have to do. What's first, what's second, what's third. First of all, when you decide that somebody wants to do an event, we have to decide where, how many people, what do we need? We need to know answers to certain questions, like what kind of event, how many people, what city, what area of the city, what kind of venue, and then is there a specific date? Are you flexible on it? And then we have to find the venue. Then we have to get the contracts. And then from there, we'd have to find the caterer. And then we have to get the entertainment and the audiovisual and the lighting. It's just one step after the other.
Right.
But some of those things have to be done immediately because you only have, once you decide your event is a certain date, you have to book certain things right away because you're not flexible anymore on that date. So if you only have one famous entertainer, well, we don't do that, but I'm just saying if that person wasn't available on that day, you have to, pick a different entertainer.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on this first episode of our show. We really appreciate your time. I know Spencer can't see us right now, but thank you, Spencer, and thank you, Valerie, so much for coming on and having this very interesting conversation. I've learned so much from both of you. Is there anything else that you guys want to add before we end the show today?
Let's all say we take a good break for the holiday. Yes. Right? Which is a great time to take a break because so many people are taking breaks.
Can I just ask, is there anything that you think you've learned or discussed here today that you haven't really considered in the past in terms of work-life balance?
I'm going to learn how to do a little more techie stuff to be more efficient and have a better work-life balance. I like your enthusiasm too, Spencer. You have, I can see that you're very passionate about your work, and that's really exciting.
Thank
I think
you
that's great.
so much. Thank you. Likewise. And always trying to stay ahead of the times. There's so much coming up in the industry. I feel like things are changing. New things are coming out every day. So super excited.
I think one of the other thing I do want to answer one other thing. I believe one of the things that helps me with work-life balance, that it might sound strange, but in getting involved with the industry events. So I like to participate in as many industry events as possible. That would be 1 day, 2 day, 3 day conferences, number one, or showcases, or just a reception in the evening, or there are so many of them. And that has helped me personally so much, because I make new connections, I get the networking, but that to me is a balance. I mean, I find those events, those types of things fun. And it's funny because my husband goes, "You just went to that. You went to that. How can you be going to another one?" But I mean, there's like SMART meetings, ILEA, MPI. There's so many things like that are valuable. And I just find that to be a good part of the balance.
Right.
Absolutely. I think, with things like industry conferences and outside of, our normal jobs, we're still getting to do something that's fun, a little different on the personal side. And then we're also kind of learning and growing. So it's a great use of our time to kind of accomplish a little bit of both.
Exactly. Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thank you both again so much for coming on our show. And we hope maybe in the future we can have you on again in the future. Again, thank you both for coming on Meetings of the Mind. For our first episode, we really appreciate it. And we hope to create many more, and maybe even in the future, if you guys would like to come back, we'd love to have you back on the show. But in the meantime, thank you so much, and have an amazing day, both of you.
Thank you,
Sarah.
Bye.
Bye, Spencer.